I do ask that y'all pray for me this morning. Matt asked me to fill in. I had a couple lessons together, and I thought I knew what I was going to do last night. And I really wasn't settled till this morning. If you will, flip over to Isaiah. Look at Isaiah chapter 40. I filled in last time on that Wednesday night. Same thing. I had a couple lessons I wanted to bring that I'd worked on, and Lord wouldn't allow it. Same this morning. This is kind of something that is for me, something I've looked at for myself, and didn't really have any intentions of bringing this, but that's the only thing the Lord let me do, so that's what we're going to do. But Isaiah 40, we'll read, look at verse 3. It says, "The voice of him that crieth in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be exalted, every mountain and hill shall be made low, and the crooked shall be made straight, and the rough places plain. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it." So, the thought that I had just studying for myself this week, I had this thought thinking about revival. And I was thinking about, as a kid going to Dad's when he lived up close to Chicago. Every summer they'd have what they call the old-fashioned tent revival. It'd be a week long, 100 degrees outside in that tent. Don't get no ideas about July. Still don't know about that one. But I was thinking about that and that thought of revival. And I'd always get there early. I'd go up in the summer to see Dad. And, of course, I'd be there early enough to help set up this tent, huge tent. And I tell you, I didn't like it then, but I look back now at it, the blessing it was. That's nothing to do with the lesson. I'm just thinking about that. The blessing it was to be there early, to help everybody set that tent up, and just to be around the right people. It really was. But I've just thought about that the thought of revival, used to, like that one, that would last, it'd be 7 days straight. Some of them used to go longer. I remember going to some that was almost 2 weeks. And, Dover's got theirs starting tomorrow. I guess it's all week as far as what I can understand. And it just seems nowadays that's almost a thing in the past. You don't see that too often. But that thought of revival, and then thinking about the conference we've got coming up in July, I would say that most of us, all of us, need revival. We need it in our personal lives. We need it in our church. I think that's something that we all stand in need of, probably more often than we care to admit. But the thought with this lesson that was for me, a meeting doesn't have to be labeled revival to be able to have revival. I know there's a time and place for that. There's a reason I would assume that a pastor feels led to have a revival meeting. But as individuals and as a church even, you can have a revival. The Lord can bring you revival, revive you at any point in time, in any service He chooses. And then, like I said, I was thinking about the conference we've got coming up. The Lord can use that to revive us as a church or as individuals. He can use any meeting, any service He sees fit. What we have to understand is that we're not going to have revival or be revived just because we set a time apart for a meeting. Just because we have some great preachers coming in doesn't mean we're going to have that time of revival. We have to understand the truth that genuine revival, it's a time when God moves sovereignly among a spiritually prepared people. There's preparations that have to be made. So I'm thinking about, again, that conference. What are we expecting out of that conference coming up? Thinking about Dover this week. We're going to try to go down there at least 2 or 3 days. What are we expecting from it? This next hour, as Brother Austin stands before us, what are we expecting from that? I guess what I'm getting at, and I know this is kind of, hopefully this makes sense to you. As we drove to church this morning, what are we expecting from today? And then how did we prepare for it? There's preparations that have to be made. And these verses we read here, I believe these verses tell us about the preparations that need to be taken and about genuine revival. And the majority of this will be right out of verse 4. You see in Matthew 3, and I'll turn over there, you don't have to if you don't want to, but Matthew 3, verse 3, we see that with John the Baptist, through that ministry, this was partially fulfilled here. Verse 3 says, For this is he that was spoken of by the prophet Isaiah, saying, the voice of one crying in the wilderness, Prepare ye the way of the Lord, make his path straight. So in our text there, Isaiah 40, verses 3 through 5, we can see, if you will, what you call maybe a roadmap for revival. It points out there the preparations that we must take if we want to see the Lord move among us in spiritual renewal. We know that, I would assume that we know we need a move of God in our lives. We need it in our church all the time. And I'd say the day that we say we don't, then we've got some serious problems. But if we want the blessings of verse 5, before we can have those, we have to make the preparations that we see there in verse 4 in Isaiah chapter 3. If we make these preparations, I can't stand up here and promise anything. I can't promise you that we'll have a revival, that the Lord will work in our lives and revive us. I can't promise you that. But if we make these preparations, I can say that it's far more likely than it would be otherwise. These preparations, what they will do is they'll form, as it says here in our text, a highway in the desert. That word highway is to be raised up. It refers to a higher or elevated. So when we take these steps that's outlined in these verses, we'll be elevated in our living. And we do that, we'll be drawn closer to the Lord because of it. So that's what I want to look at, these thoughts that I've had on this, thinking about revival and just different things, is some of the preparations that we'll have to follow. I've got 4 short and simple points or thoughts, if you will. The first one, you see there in verse 4, Isaiah 40, verse 4 says, Every valley shall be exalted. Some things will have to be lifted up. Every valley shall be exalted. It refers to that filling process. Every valley, think of that, a valley, a crevice, a gutter, or a low place. This speaks about the places in our lives that are lacking. We all have those low places, those low spots in our walk with the Lord, every one of us. We all have places that we've allowed to become hollowed out or shallow. Those places have to be filled in before revival can come in our lives. These valleys, they can take on many different forms. For some, it's spiritual. Maybe it's your prayer life, Bible reading, church attendance, unforgiveness, anger, self-righteousness. For some, it's physical. Could be financial problems, marital issues, relationships, activities that pull you away from God. Maybe just the general hardships of life, because we all face it. So, what I'm saying about that today is just look at your life. Identify those low places that need to be filled up and get busy doing it. If you will, and again, guys, I'm not pointing fingers at a single. This right here was my personal study for me, and this is what the Lord had me to bring. So this is me, 100%. But if we do that, we're more likely to experience genuine revival and the Lord working in our lives. Verse 4 says, every mountain and hill shall be made low. Some things will have to be lowered down. Every mountain and hill shall be made low. That's lowering process. A mountain or a hill is something that stands higher and taller than the landscape around it, right? And throughout history, think about that. Throughout history, mountains and hills have always been a hindrance to man's progress. This speaks about the barriers or the roadblocks that are in our lives. These things that have the potential to hinder revival from coming. They can hinder the Lord from working. Things that, instead of drawing us closer to the Lord, have the ability to separate us from Him. We all have had these things in our life, something along those natures, or that nature. We've had it. There is many potential barriers from revival that hinder the Lord from working. Jealousy, lust, pride, unfaithfulness, hindering relationships, worry, hypocrisy, disobedience to the will of God, busyness, fear, guilt, again, unforgiveness. That's a tough one. So, while we need to work in some areas of our lives to bring things up to where they need to be, we also have to work to tear down some of these barriers that stand between us and the Lord. Everybody has mountains in their life. There's always barriers. We have attitudes, actions, maybe some passions that need to be brought down so that God can move the way He wants to. I've noticed that when mountains are brought down, these low places are filled up, the Lord can work. And when the Lord works in your life, I know every one of y'all have been through this. When you're not as close to the Lord as you should be, your walk is not the way it should be, life can be pretty miserable. But when you lower these things, you get these barriers out of the way and the Lord can work in your life. How much sweeter is life? Romans 8:31, if God be for us, who can be against us? When the Lord's able to work, that's when you can grab hold of that verse and really feel it and know it. I've had those low moments where it just feels like the Lord's not even there to help me. That's my fault. That was me. 100% all me. Because the Lord didn't change. That was me. And then you've had them mountaintops where you know the Lord's there. You know He's for you. You know He's working for you. It always has been. How much more enjoyable is life when you're in those spots? I mean, it just is. So look at your life today. Think about those high places that stand as barriers between you and the Lord. What are they? I don't know. I'm assuming you have them. I know I've got them. I'm assuming we all have them at times. What are they? Get it right. Verse 4 says, the crooked shall be made straight. Refers to getting things lined up like they should be. Some things will have to be lined up. That word crooked can take on the meaning here of deceitful, sly, slippery. It speaks of a road that's deceptive in nature. It promises one thing and delivers another. It appears to be level and easy, but when you travel it, what does it do? It proves to be hazardous, and it always leads to a fall. If we want, and again, the thought of this for me is revival doesn't always have to be, keep that in mind when it's a revival meeting. It can be any time the Lord chooses to bring that. But if we want revival in our lives, we're going to have to identify those areas. We got to look at those areas that we've taken the wrong road, and we got to get back on track with the Lord. Some, and again, I'm not saying this is any of y'all, but some have gotten themselves in relationships maybe that have led them away from God. And what I mean by that, that could be just friends. I've said it from up here 100 times. Show me who your friends are, and I'll show you who you're soon to become. The people you're around matter. People will veer you in the wrong direction and take you away from the Lord. That road is crooked, and it needs to be straightened out. Some have allowed, and this is me, work. Some have allowed work, recreation, or some other pursuit to lead them away from the Lord. I've done it. I'm guilty of it. I will let work consume me, and I will make it a priority. And every time I do, it is an absolute mess, without fail. That's a dangerous road, and it has to be abandoned for a straight road of serving the Lord. Some have wandered down a path of self-righteousness. Again, I don't think it's anybody here. I think some of us have seen it before. They've come to believe that they know what's right for everybody around them. That's a dangerous road, and it needs to be abandoned for that straight path of humility. Some are walking this crooked path of pride. They refuse to bow to the lordship of Jesus in their lives. Derek said it from up here. I've said it. People want redemption, but they don't want the Redeemer. They want all the good things that come with it, but they don't want to serve Him like they should. They don't want to bow down to Him and submit. They hear His word and they turn a deaf ear to it. I've done it. That's me. I've done it. Again, that's a dangerous path. It's got to be abandoned for the path of humble service to the Lord. Every one of us have all taken the wrong path at times. If we want the Lord to work in our lives, we want revival in our lives, our church, we have to consider the path that our feet are walking right now. We have to abandon those deceitful, those sly, those slippery paths of sin, pride, self-righteousness, worldliness, all those things that lead to destruction. We have to get rid of it. We have to step onto a path of submission, surrender, obedience to the Word and the will of God. And it's hard at times. We make it so hard. So the path we're on today, are we walking a path that God can bless? Verse 4, you see it says the rough places, plain. The smoothing process. That word rough refers to that which is impassable. Roughness or being bound up. can have the idea of maybe being doubtful. It speaks to those areas in our lives that are a little rough, those areas that are questionable, those areas where we know we could do better, but we don't. I believe the Bible tells us pretty clearly how to handle some of these areas. 1 Thessalonians 5:22 says, abstain from all appearance of evil. I believe the Word is telling us that we need to examine our lives and we need to deal with those places where we're a little rough around the edges. We need to address those areas that we're tolerating things that need to be confessed and forsaken. I would say we've all got some of those areas. We have those places in our lives that are a little rough. We allow ourselves to take a mile, and the Lord's forbidden even an inch. We allow things like gossip. Could be a picture of me on Leo's dirt bike. Envy, anger, unforgiveness. Again, this is me. Slackness, hatred, bad temper, bad habits, arrogance, tardiness, prayerlessness. How about impurity in talk? That's a tough one. That's not always what we think it is. Just think on that. Impurity in talk. Impurity in thoughts. How about impurity in motives? That one will get us. That'll get me. It'll get me every time. I'm quick to try to justify why I'm doing something because I want to do it. Our motives, that'll get us. That's a big one. We fool ourselves a lot. There's 1,000 areas that could be named, but I'm talking about these things that we often, either we don't see nothing wrong with it, or we excuse it as our own little weakness. We kind of let it slide. We allow those rough places in our walk with the Lord. But they have to be smoothed out if we want Him to work in our lives. If we want to see a genuine revival in our lives, we got to work those places out. We got to smooth them out. We got to get rid of them. So, we'll end with this. If real revival came, what would it look like? It wouldn't be just a few days, 4 or 5 days of a meeting, and then just forgotten right after. If real revival came, would everybody embrace it? You know, I believe, honestly, I believe in our church here, I believe the answer to that's yes. But I've seen in a lot of churches, I believe the answer would be no. If real revival came, I think a lot of people would leave. A lot of people like things the way they are. And I think most of y'all could attest to this. Revival, it messes things up for those that are unwilling to change. We got to watch it that that's not us. We're not above it. I think what we have here is special. The Lord's blessed here. But we can fall and falter like anybody else. If it came, what would it look like? I think it'd look a lot like verse 5 in our text. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. We'll look at a couple scriptures here. We won't read them all. These are all in Acts, and we've been in Acts, it seems like, for about 6 or 7 years. But we'll look at a couple of these. Acts chapter 2. Let's see. Yeah, Acts chapter 2. Let's just look down to verse 42. And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, and in breaking of bread and in prayers. And fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done by the apostles, and all that believed were together and had all things common. And sold their possessions and goods and parted them to all men as every man had need, and they continuing daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking of bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added unto the church such as should be saved. I think that's what it'd look like. Acts chapter 4, 23 through 33. That's another one. We won't read all these. Acts chapter 5, 1 through 13. Acts chapter 8, verses 4 through 8. You can look at these and read them if you want. I encourage you to. But what I'm getting at here is I think real revival, when it comes, it'll change things. It'll make the church look more like what we're seeing in some of these in Acts. It'll change each and every one of us as individuals. The way we live, what we do outside of here. Real revival, it'll empower us for God's work. It'll impassion us to reach the lost. It'll enliven us to worship the Lord. It'll instruct us in holiness. But to have, again, the point to this is what preparations are we making? And it's not just, we got a revival meeting scheduled. This is something you might hear somebody do a lesson on for that, but this is every day. What preparations are we taking every single day? Before we come to church on Sunday, before we come on Wednesday, before we do a devotion at home, what preparations are we making as individuals to prepare us for what the Lord has? Y'all may be just fine with all that. I'm not. I fail at it every single day. I don't think real revival would be something about some kind of emotionalism where we just feel all warm and gooey inside for a few days and it's gone. That's what happens a lot. It'll cause us as individuals and a church to fall in love with the Lord again. How easy do we lose that fire? And I'm not putting him on the spot. I apologize. The other day I was talking to Brother Justin, and he was telling me that, the short time he's been saved, that even he has seen those moments where he's just lost that fire a little bit. It's not like it was. And we all do that. And that's our fault. That's our fault. Whatever the reasons may be, I can't tell you what it is for each and every one of you. I can look at mine and just pray the Lord shows me where I'm in error. When real revival comes in our lives, you look at Romans real quick. Romans chapter 13. We'll be able to fulfill this when it comes. Romans chapter 13. Look at verse 11. And that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. Let us walk honestly as in the day, not in rioting or in drunkenness, not in chambering or wantonness, not in strife and envying, but put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make not provisions for the flesh to fulfill the lust thereof. Until we can fulfill that, I ask, have we had that real revival? Can you fulfill that right now, or do we need revival? Real, genuine revival. Is it possible? Have we experienced it before? I believe the answer to both those questions is yes. But the only thing I can tell you, and this is something, again, for me, it's going to be a whole lot more likely that the Lord's going to work when we're making the preparations that we need to make. Guys, I know that was short. I apologize for that. This was a study that was just for me. It really wasn't meant for a lesson. Don't still to this, right this very minute. I don't know why the Lord wanted me to bring it. I tried to do something else. He wouldn't let me. So I pray that made sense to you. And that's all I've got.